Hello, and welcome to another edition of F12's ongoing training and orientation and overviews about Microsoft Copilot, particularly about Copilot for 365, which integrates directly with our corporate data and applications, is revolutionizing how businesses are able to work. I'm excited for this topic because a short while ago, we held boot camps in 4 different cities across Canada and asked for feedback about what the attendees would like to learn more about. And one of the top requests was for more information about security, regulations, compliance, all of the kind of behind the scenes facts and configuration considerations that clients need to think about as they adopt Microsoft Copilot for 365. This is a big topic, and quite frankly, I'm out of my depth to cover this topic in any detail. So I'm really happy that we're going to have a series of sessions where I'm bringing in a really true expert who has more than a decade of experience in the space of dealing with Microsoft 365 security, enablement, and is at the forefront of Copilot adoption, Copilot governance, and all of the things around Microsoft Copilot. So it's my pleasure to bring up McGill Caron. Excellent. McGill, thank you for joining us today. How are you today, sir?
Very good. Thank you. Yourself, David?
I am excellent. Now, I did my best to kind of explain to the audience a little bit about who you are and why I'm really excited to benefit from your knowledge. Do you want to add any color to that about your experience in the space and how AvePoint is uniquely situated to help organizations understand and deal with these challenges?
Yeah, sure. So actually, I'm in the IT industry for more than 25 years, and I actually started in the information management. And I remember back in the days, it was very complex. We had some very great solutions back then, but the main challenge was always to determine what kind of data do we have. And as long as we can't figure that out, then there's no way that we can start managing it in a proper way. And so it never really took off. Now, what I'm seeing with the arrival of AI and Copilot, this might be the revolution that we've been waiting for, where everybody wants to benefit from Copilot, but Copilot feeds off of data, and you want to make sure
Hmm.
that the data that will be provided to AI and Copilot is the right data, accurate, relevant. And so, with all these years now, I'm very confident that that's the revolution we've been waiting for, at least in my time frame.
Yeah, I mean, it just as you're talking, it made me think about how much data we generate. I mean, just as individuals, it's ridiculous. And now we're recording Teams meetings and Zoom. Like it's just such an explosion,
Yep.
and it's a lot to tackle. And I think everyone wants AI to help with that, but there's two sides to that coin. Having a bot that never sleeps that can read everything you've ever done also has its considerations and can also access things across organizations. Which
Yep.
brings us to our first topic to discuss in our series together, and that is about security and regulation considerations. McGill, I understand you prepared some information. I'd like to walk through it with you, or have you walk me and the audience through um, considerations around Copilot and why it changes how we think about our data exposures and risks and regulations. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what you have in store and invite you to share your screen and take us through the material you have.
All right, let's take a look at this. So actually, and the fact that this is a key topic, just the fact that the governments now are actually looking at this very seriously, uh, that's also an indication that this thing is going to be a big revolution coming up, and everybody is actually going to be impacted by this. So the idea here is really the first thing I wanted to explain or expose is the industry challenges with Microsoft 365 management in light of Copilot and artificial intelligence. And so the expected benefits from such a new technology, I think, have been being used as, I don't know, Devon, if you're using Copilot currently, but I've been
Every
using
day.
it every day. So we've been using it for more than a year now, and I could tell you that more and more we use it. And the benefits of this are tremendous. In fact, it's not going as quickly as we would like, because even ourselves at AvePoint adopting Copilot is a challenge, because just like any other organizations, we have been pumping information We also have software developers and all this. So there's lots of information that is spread all over the place. And so in some cases, it's very interesting. So we were be able, just give you a very quick example. Very quickly, we were able to connect a chat GPT bot directly to our product information. And so from internally, we're able to interrogate the chat bot about our own solutions. AppWent has a tremendous book of a catalog of solutions. So it's getting more and more complex and hard for the memory to retain everything. So we just ask questions of the bot, and the answers that we're getting are tremendous. They're actually, some of them are so good quality that you just copy paste in an email and send it over to your partner, you know. So the benefits
So
of
powerful.
using, yeah, the benefits of Copilot and AI is just, I don't even see the end of it actually. So it's going to be very powerful. But being powerful and thinking about the fact that all the information that might be exposed to those technologies, that's where the challenges come from, and that's where you need to
Yeah.
take a look at these considerations that we're looking here on the right side.
Before we get into the considerations, Miguel, I wanted to kind of
Yeah,
highlight something you said that may have surprised some who are watching this who are just getting into Copilot. You mentioned you've been using it for over a year. Now, AvePoint's a big company, thousands of employees. And what might not be well known is that Copilot was initially introduced to the enterprise by Microsoft. So large organizations have been able to lever Copilot for quite some time. It's been only relatively recently that they brought it down to the small and mid-sized enterprise, which is the
hmm,
market that F12 plays in. So
yep,
we're really at the beginnings of this entire revolution.
right.
And so, yeah, just in case people are wondering, like, how come I haven't had it a year ago? It's really all just beginning to take steam right now.
Absolutely. And at the same time, everybody has access to an AI, right? Just think about what's available
Mm,
into Edge. So the publicly speaking, we're able to use Copilot in our day-to-day personal lives and all this. It's all there. So people are being used to use it on a personal level. It's just a little bit longer to bring it to the professional level from within each companies. And definitely, you said it earlier on, Devon, how much data are we pumping out on our day-to-day basis every single day? So I'm gonna show you a statistic in just a few slides here. But if we talk about all the data that we're producing, obviously, where is that data sitting, right? So today we're going to be focusing on Microsoft 365. So obviously there is tons of data being produced in those environments, and have been there for a long time now. We can't say anymore that, oh, people are just starting out if in Microsoft
yeah.
365. Some companies have been in Microsoft 365 and Office 365 before that, and even BPOS for a very long time. Have they cleaned up all that information since then? Hmm. Chances are not really. So it's all sitting there. So permissions, access, and obviously we can't move away from not only the amount of storage, but also think about all the data that's sitting in there and the nature of that data. It's all sorts, right? There's financial information in there. There's personal information in there. So data privacy is another thing that you need to take into consideration. Think about what could happen if someone falls on a file with, personal information of an illness or something, or maybe an address of someone that we should not know about. And then we talked about the governments now that are putting some new regulations, or at least they're talking about putting things in place in regards of AI and Copilot. So security and compliance is definitely a big topic to address. And obviously, if we miss all these key considerations here, well, your adoption of AI, because to my knowledge, it's not very affordable at this point to use Copilot. Just to think about Copilot 365, just a license cost is very, very expensive. So if you have a bad adoption, or people not adopting this technology because of the results, think about the searches that we've been going through in all these years, trying to find things through searches. The
Yeah.
more data that you're exposed to, what happens in your results? It's complete, like it's there's lots of noise in your search results. And the result of that is that people don't rely on searches anymore. So the adoption of search is very seldom. They rather redo what they need to search for because it could take as long to actually search for that information than actually produce it again. So the adoption of that is not very good. So what we're trying to say here is let's try to avoid this for Copilot 365. Let's try to make sure that we take the time to make sure our environment is ready, secure, and cleaned so that the adoption when it actually starts is going to be fruitful.
I think it's good to make sure that we expand the term data and what we're talking about when we talk about 365. Because I think it can be really easy to think about files and the file shares that we may have on SharePoint or OneDrive. But really, the ecosystem has so much more data. You talked about the types, financial data, and that sort of stuff. But there's all the emails that have been sent and received, all the meetings, all the meeting recordings or transcripts that still exist.
It's true.
All the
Yep.
Teams discussions, things that have been shared in and outside of Teams, all the OneNote notes that may have been created.
Yep.
And it goes on and on. We could go through every one of Microsoft's product suites that are in the 365 ecosystems, from bookings to forms to, and on it goes. But
Yep.
the data, just the breadth of it is incredible. And it's all, unless somebody's been cleaning it, which no one has, it's all
No
just
one has.
gathering and gathering.
Yep.
It's crazy to think
Exactly.
about.
Exactly. So so here's some interesting numbers in here. So when implementing AI, 45% of the organizations that were surveyed encountered unintended data exposure. So when they're just testing it out, they were testing it out, maybe a small pilot or whatever, and they found issues very, very quickly in that regards. 47% of the digital workers struggled to find information. That's exactly what I was exposing just a few minutes ago, where there's so much information sitting in my system. When I do some searches, I don't know if you've ever tried searching through Teams, for example, or even just
Oh,
through SharePoint, try to find things. It's just a nightmare. There's so much information in there. So you sort of like lose confidence in what you can search. And then another survey says that out of 40,000 permissions that were granted into a 365 environment, more than 50% of those permissions were high risk and capable of causing a catastrophic damage if used improperly. Now, when you think about AI and Copilot, which it will know what it does not know. That's the big difference. You, as a human, you don't know what you don't know. Copilot will know what he doesn't know because
yeah,
a Copilot will search everywhere it can actually search, right? So that's the big thing. And
absolutely.
then that gives you the last statistics here. It tells you that 43% of respondents indicate that the most common barrier is the lack of a clear strategy for AI because they don't know where to start. Where do I start? How do I figure out if my environment is ready, is Copilot ready? And maybe I don't want to go through those organizations who actually implemented it very quickly, but rapidly turned it off because of these issues that we're actually encountering here.
Not to mention
Um,
the damage when they discovered
right,
those issues. I know when we tried it, I asked some questions like, hey, just to test, how much money, what's the salary of so and so that I should have no right to know. And lo and
right.
behold, an Excel file was shared with me years ago that I could never
Hmm.
have found that I had access to.
Exactly,
You and I have
exactly.
gray hair, McGill, so we remember the old
Really?
days. Yeah,
Yeah,
for what it's worth, I'm Novell NetWare certified. If for any of your old hats out there, there was a
yeah,
time when the IT could control security. We gave you an S drive, we gave you an accounting share, we gave you a home drive, and we controlled the hierarchy of permissions within there. And we
yeah,
could look and tell you. And then in this new world that we all adopted, everybody could share and everybody could, you know, um, self provide information inside the organization and outside the organization. And we're inheriting what, years of these practices now. And most
yeah,
people weren't well trained on what it meant to right
yeah,
click share in or do it in an application. Yeah.
yeah. And I could say one of our large ongoing customers that we have actually when they decided that they would like to start rolling out Copilot, they immediately went to us and asked us our advice and what we should do and what they should do and so forth. And after some workshops that we've done with them, they've decided to put a pause to it and take at least a year to make sure that they
Wow.
prepare the entire environment. Now, I'm talking about a large company that has offices across the world, like in thousands and thousands of employees. Of course, so the bigger, the larger, then the longer the challenge, or the biggest the challenge is, the longer it will take. But just to give you an idea, they prefer to take that time to actually prepare the environment than to actually roll it out and then be able create some catastrophic situations and roll it back. So I think that's the safe bet to do for everybody.
Look before
So
you leap is the analogy that comes to mind here.
what was that?
I said, look before you leap is the analogy that comes to mind
Yes.
from what you were just saying there.
Yes, exactly. So what type of data are we holding on? That's the first question that comes to mind. And when you look at an entire environment, we have the data that we use every single day, which most of us know what that is. Okay. It's that little black box at the bottom there is about 15% of what we're seeing here. And then you have all the information that you need to keep. So relevant data that needs to be kept in your system, which might be adding another 15 or 20%. So we're at about 25, 30% of on the left side, what we're seeing here, right? What's
Yeah.
the dark data that we see here, which is about 80%? So this is interesting because obviously for people who don't know, AvePoint have been doing migration projects for years, like for 20 some years. And I've heard all sorts of stories about migration projects. And one of the thing is data cleanup. So migrating on-prem. So remember a couple of years ago, what was very popular was to move on-prem, SharePoint on-prem to go into Microsoft 365 or SharePoint Online, let's put it that way. And so there were two types of project. One project is that take everything that we have on-prem and swing it into SharePoint
It's
Online.
just
That's it.
a giant dump. Let's bring it
A
all. Yeah.
giant, a
Yeah.
giant dump, and that's it. The others was, well, let's start cleaning up. Let's take this project, let's take our time with this migration project, and let's start cleaning up our data. So, of course, all these challenges about finding what kind of data, AvePoint has all these different discovery tools and reports and whatnot that enables you to do that. And what was interesting is that in lots of migration projects, about 70 to 80% of that data would not even be migrated because it was completely outdated, irrelevant, obsolete data. And that's what we're looking on this screen, that dark data. So all the
It's not a
customers,
surprise for anybody who's moved homes, because every time I just relocate physically, I wind up throwing out an ungodly amount of stuff that you just go like, I haven't looked at this in 5 years. Why do I still own it? Um,
yes,
it's important to underline this point that AvePoint's been doing this data analysis and cleanup and having the utilities for migrations for a very long
yeah,
time. That's actually how F12 and AvePoint have been working together. It's been our partner to help us with our migrations to 365. I don't know anybody else who has these kinds of tools and capabilities to help organizations sort through their data the way that AvePoint helps. So just to provide context, this isn't a brand new problem. Copilot's just what made it worse, would you say, McGill, or exposed it to
well,
a different
exactly.
element? Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So think about the customers or all these migration projects that did not take that opportunity to clean up the data. You end up with what we're seeing here on the screen, all that dark data that was actually brought in. Now, add to that migration might have had happened 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Now, how much data more are we talking
True.
about 7 years later? So it's just insane the amount of data there. And Copilot, like I said earlier, Copilot, if it could actually have access to all that information if not only it's obsolete, but if also the security is wrong and it's not properly set. It's just going to go and fetch whatever information it requires. It's not going to ask questions if is this data that I'm sending to Devon still relevant? No, it's not going to ask question. Is that
Yeah.
information that I'm sending over to Devon, is he supposed to see this or is it critical? No, he's got access to it. So bingo, there you go. You have it in your hands. So that's what we're actually facing right now. A little bit scary when you come and think about it. So it's all about the data storage, data management, cost of extra storage. You need to think about that as well. Microsoft has been pretty loose on storage, exceeding storage in Microsoft 365. Now they're like changing a little bit their focus and saying, wait a minute, we should actually start, billing people or organizations that are just exploding their storage. And we've witnessed that because I would say in the last year or so, we've had more and more customers call us, Halfway, can you help us? Like, we're just getting blasted by Microsoft in terms of exceeding our storage. How can you help us? So, and
And
and,
that's
and
just the
so
hard cost. But I want to expose
that's a hard
there's an
cost.
organizational productivity cost when you say go to find, I don't care, a sales presentation folder or an expense form or name the document, and you have to wade through 18 different old revisions. You don't even know which one's right because this is the challenge organizations have, and they all exist forever.
Yeah, exactly. And that second bullet there explains a lot of things there. One of the reasons why nobody actually gets rid of information is that they have no tangible ways of doing it. It's either you get rid of it, so you delete it, or you leave it somewhere in a cold storage at, in a cabinet, and hopefully nobody asks for it because we don't even know what kind of state it's going to
How
be
do you
when we
find
actually
it? Yeah.
right. How do you find it? And I remember a couple of years ago, one of my former employers, we were running out of storage. It was on the on-premise days, but we were running out of storage. And instead of trying to figure out, what can we do with this information to save space, reduce space, to keep using this SAN device, they decided to go the easy way, which is just purchase another SAN device. So they spend another million or what
Yeah,
of
kick the
extra
problem
storage
forward, right?
space.
Because data is
Right.
cheap,
And
storage is
so
cheap, kick it forward. Yeah.
exactly. And the main
Yeah.
reasons I was hearing is that, well, we don't have any, like, there's no solutions out there that can properly start identifying the information that we have and then take a decision. What do we do with this? Do we keep it? Do we archive it? Do we move it somewhere else temporarily for a number of years? There was maybe not as much types of solutions like that, or maybe not mature enough in those days. But today we're not at that same place. I think now with Microsoft 365 and the solutions that I will be presenting, eventually, you're going to see that there are some areas where you can actually use this. So there is a big thing about storage. So storage is good. There is a cost saving there, but also think about the quality of the data that will be generated from AI or Copilot once all the outdated stuff is completely out of there.
I just had a flashback. Do you remember that old show Hoarders,
Hmm.
where people would just gather stuff and they needed an intervention? They just somebody to come in and say,
Yeah,
we got to bring the dumpster in and we got to clean up. And that's kind of where we are.
you couldn't even get out of their houses, right? Because of
Yeah. It's
the
really quite tragic, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So now if we leave storage and talk about data privacy, security, and compliance, well, like I was saying earlier, the government are now starting to take a look at this. And like a lot of stuff, some of these laws they're actually outdated. Some laws don't exist. So in terms of what we're seeing happening, there's two things. First, there was, if you think about the PIPEDA regulation that's been out there for a number of years, it's sort of like outdated because it's not taking account this AI stuff. It's barely taking account of some of the privacy information in there. So the Canadian government is looking to actually modernize this. For now, it's called the Bill C-27. Now, what's interesting, as I was actually researching on all this, in Quebec, for instance, they were not under the PIPEDA jurisdiction. So they were far behind. So I guess in the early 20s, like just before the pandemic, they put a new law in place, or a bill at that time, and then it became a law, which is now called today the Law 25, which addresses mainly security and compliance. It doesn't address AI, and the reason for that is that they were too early in the process of redoing all. So now they're going to have to do an amendment to this because it's going to have some point. It's going to have to address the AI situation. The Bill C-27, which is later in that process, it is an evolution of PIPEDA. It will take care of the AI stuff. If we go a little bit further here, it's now is divided in three major scopes, and if you look at some of this, a lot of it, some of it is addressing specifically AI systems. So the third one here, the Consumer Privacy Protection Act, will actually have and embed AI systems in their in that law. So three different topics here. The Consumer Privacy Protection Act, that's all about some of the consumer stuff. Then the Personal Information and Data Protection Tribunal Act, and then the Consumer Privacy Protection Act that will address the AI system.
So now
And
you're going to take us line by line through these. Oh, you are. My goodness.
well, not too deep. I'm not going to redo the entire. You need to go read what's on this. What we're going to address mostly is what I actually highlighted right there: security measures, transparency in data use, and sort of like help you start off development of a privacy management program. I think the idea here is what we're proposing is give you some of the tools to help you build that privacy management program. And we're mostly addressing what's in here, like what type of data you have, where is it, what's the nature of that data, who's got access to it, who actually accessed it as well, and all about the security and the relevant and outdated information at the same time. And what I wanted to highlight here is similar to GDPR in Europe, where that's been there for, boy, that must be close to 10 years now. They had penalties if you were not able to respect some of these different regulations. So same thing will be here in the whenever this law is going to be enforced. So we're talking about 3% of the previous fiscal year's revenue, up to $10 million. Now, I don't want to have everybody panicking, running all over the place. This law, the C-27, is expected to be enforced in potential end of 2025, but our feeling is that it's going to go longer, maybe 2026. So we have time in front of us, and let's take that time to actually go ahead and prepare to what's going to prepare our environment to actually roll out
And often I know
Copilot.
when these things come up and organizations get into hot waters, from my experience, that they just want, the first thing the regulators look at is, do you have a framework? Are you doing appropriate due diligence on it? What is your policy? And they don't look very favorably when people just go, well, we don't have one. Yeah, we have
Right.
15 years of, personally identifiable information. We really haven't done anything about it, and it somehow led to an exposure. That does
Right.
not go well.
Exactly. So now we see the context, we see the challenge, we see what's coming up. Here's a very high level presentation of our holistic governance approach using some of the AvePoint solution tools. So I'm just going to explain this approach in a very high level. And it's a very straightforward three-step approach. The first step is obviously all about preparing your Microsoft 365 environment. So centralizing the information from maybe on-premise silos that you guys have through a migration project, bringing it into Microsoft 365. Why centralize everything in 365? Well, we think that doing this approach is simpler to actually roll out Copilot 365 eventually once you're done with your preparation phase. If you want to use Copilot outside of 365, no one's actually saying don't do this. We're just saying that it's a little bit more complex, because then now you need to roll out some connectors to your on-premise data silos or data workloads. You'll need to maintain those. You'll need to make sure the connectivity is actually there. And then how do you manage that information from a source standpoint to make sure that the correct information will be consumed by the Copilot? So having everything centralized into 365, you only have to worry about one area, one environment, a cloud environment, and then maintain that environment using your AI systems or your AI rollout, whatever. So centralized information there, but like we said earlier, a lot of companies have been um, growing that information for years and years. So the data integrity, data hygiene is another key aspect. So part of the preparation is also to make sure that that information that's sitting in your 365 is relevant and consumable. Then the step number two is identify the risk and enforce the content policies. So make sure that, since we know Copilot will just fetch whatever information it requires and not really, start asking questions about who should I give or hand that information to. So the permissions, the security, who's got access to what, uh, is a key stakeholder. So it's a key option here or process. So that needs to be done first. So those two first steps, and they're not like we say step one, prepare, step two, secure. It's not really one and two. You can revert that if you want. If you want to start by security, that's fine. And then make sure and then clean out your information. That's also fine. The important thing is that those two steps need to be done. We strongly recommend that those steps be done before you think about rolling out 365 Microsoft Copilot. And then the last step is really the work that you're going to think about, the effort that you're going to put in step number two or step number one, or those two together. You don't want to redo this every 6 months or every two or every year. So you want to maintain what you've put in place and make sure that year over year, week over week, it actually stays in a best possible situation to consume AI. So optimize that information, bring in automation and a good governance framework on top of that to make sure that your environment stays in that situation in a best fashion for Copilot consumption.
Well, that's really clear, and I appreciate taking us through the measures we need to get to that spot. It certainly seems intuitively correct that once you've got your house in order, it's easier and wiser to keep it that way, to
Yeah.
have the policies and systems in place to make sure that you don't get all of this stuff finished.
When you
Very,
buy
very
a new
helpful.
a new couch, make sure the old one goes out, right?
Yeah, right. Excellent. So I guess we can summarize at this point, McGill. Copilot, from what you've discussed, and correct me if I've said anything wrong, it's like that new employee that can scan all of the information that it has access to, which, if we don't put some guardrails in place, is everything that the individuals who are searching have access to, whether they know it or not. That information, likely about 80% of it, is what you call dark data. It's stuff that's not relevant, it's old, it's out of date, it's incorrect, and it may even have security and regulatory concerns. Governments are addressing this. We know they're slow, but regulation's coming. And particularly, thank you for digging into Canada and how our regulations are developing. We got to get in front of this. And here's a methodology for approaching it. We need to secure it. We need to prepare where it is, how we get to it, and of course, centralization is always easier to control than decentralization. And then
Right.
finally, think about our go forward plan. Is that a fair summary of security and regulatory considerations?
That's an excellent summary. I couldn't have said it better myself. Yep.
Well, fantastic. Thank you very much for taking us through this. For everyone who's watching this, encourage you to look for future conversations McGill and I are going to have about security and data hygiene and getting into some more specifics that come out of the concepts that we have just discussed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Devan. See you. Talk to you next.